Hey guys, how you going? This is BillyEatWorld. Thanks for stopping by, and just remember, if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, feel free to take a look at some of my other Battlefield videos if you like. You can find them all in a playlist in the description down below. But anyway, by now you might have realised that the BF5 hype train has begun, and maybe you've even seen some of the speculation videos getting around on YouTube. So chances are, like me, you're starting to get excited, but I'm guessing part of you is also a little worried after the release of Hardline. As far as hype trains go, it couldn't have been bigger than it was for this game, but I think the general consensus is that it didn't live up to expectations. And when this is fast becoming the norm in the video game industry, it's getting harder and harder to be excited about upcoming games like BF5. So today what we're going to do is take another look at Battlefield Hardline, which in just over a month's time will be a year old. And at this point in its life cycle, many people would say that Hardline isn't going that well compared to, say, BF4, which was still up there at the head of the FPS pack. I mean, there's no doubt Hardline was a commercial success, but with only 13,000 players currently active on a daily basis, it's definitely no BF4. So with BF5 less than a year away now, I think it's probably a good time we took another look at Hardline's biggest mistakes so that they don't get made again. But anyway, to kick off, the first issue with Hardline I can remember really putting people off was the time to kill. And that's because Hardline had a much faster time to kill than BF4, but unlike most hardcore style shooters, it didn't have the recoil to compensate. In Battlefield 5, I wouldn't necessarily mind if they kept the same time to kill, but at least try and make the guns feel more realistic, because I think most players feel Hardline doesn't really require that much skill, which is why a lot of people compared the game to COD in those early days. Another big launch issue was the weapon balance, which you might remember was a massive problem at least for the first few months. There was basically a handful of guns worth using, and the rest were pretty much trash, which led to most players getting bored of the game. Eventually patches did come through, but by that time the damage had already been done and a lot of the players had moved on. So I think a big ticket item for DICE in BF5 is to make sure they get the weapon balance right from day one, or at least get the patches out much sooner. Now, another big issue which is still a problem for me and a lot of other players is Hardline's performance on console. I mean, Hardline isn't as visually impressive as BF4, and yet for some reason it runs a lot worse, which leads me to believe it needed more optimization. On the other hand, Battlefront looks amazing and runs really well on console, but by the same token, it only has a 40 player cap. So maybe DICE will need to reduce the player cap in BF5 as well. I don't know, but either way, I really think BF5 needs to run smoothly on every platform. Speaking of graphics, well, I think Hardline also proved that players expect a certain level of realism and detail from Battlefield games. And although it didn't really bother me, the almost cartoony art style and the jerky animations were a real turn-off for a lot of people. The recoil animations especially was the thing that annoyed me the most, and it's an almost jarring experience to play Hardline compared to BF4. But like I said, DICE have proved with Battlefront they can make a visually stunning game, so hopefully they can make BF5 look just as good. Now, I know by now some of you guys are already heading to the comments to say something like, but hang on, DICE didn't even make Hardline. And that's completely true, which is another problem that I think really hurt the game and has hurt the franchise in the long run. I mean, on one hand, you don't really want to compare the work of one studio to another, but on the other hand, you can't help it because it bears the same Battlefield name. And surely DICE must have known that whatever Visceral produced would reflect on them and the franchise, and that will ultimately affect the sales of Battlefield 5. Which brings me to my next point, which is the fact that when you think of Battlefield, you think of present-day military combat. So from day one, they must have known that a police theme was gonna be hard for the fans to swallow, especially when it was being made by a different studio. This is the part that I'm probably most worried about when it comes to BF5, because I've got this feeling that they're gonna go for a different theme again. And if they do, say go into the future for example, I think this is gonna be the trigger that will cause the vast majority of the remaining fans to abandon the franchise entirely. Now, to finish up, I should say that despite everything I've said already in this video, I am still a fan of Hardline. I mean, sure, it didn't hit the nail on the head for most fans, but that in itself doesn't make it a bad game. But when it comes to Battlefield 5, a numbered game in the franchise, I don't want to be saying this game is dead a year after it comes out. I want this game to be even better than BF4, and I think after Hardline, the pressure is on DICE to make sure that it is. The only way we're going to make sure this happens though is by making noise about it and making sure EA knows what we expect. And one thing that you've got to give to EA and DICE is that they do often listen to the community if we all shout loud enough. So make sure you're commenting on videos like this, posting on Reddit or tweeting at devs and community managers, because every single opinion matters. And just remember, time is running out, so if you want to speak up, you're going to have to do it soon, because in a few months, it's going to be too late. But anyway, guys, that just about wraps up my thoughts on this topic. So let me know what you think in the comment section below, and as always, if you like what you see, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out the links in the description below if you want to see more of my videos, or if you want to support my channel on Patreon. And until next time, see you later, and have a good one.